Rodriguez. I will be going over a comprehensive performance analysis on the sport of American football. Today we'll be exploring the game's structure, physiological demands, and some applied training strategies that will prepare our athletes for elite competition. Um, this is just some of the stuff we'll be going over. So these first few slides will be an overview of the sport rules, what it entails, scoring, field dimensions. We'll then make our way over to the analysis of physical demands and bioenergetics, along with training themes, things that our athletes should be focusing on, things as us as coaches should be pushing onto our athletes to make them better, make sure we win more games, anything that's going to make them a better athlete. We're going to slowly then make our way over to um, some of the more pressing stuff, including injury considerations and some of the more common injuries and things we can do to prevent them. And we'll finish off here with some sample workouts and that we come up with some of the key components to making our athletes some of the top class athletes in the world. Um, at the end of this presentation, we're going to go do 10 questions just to kind of recap what we've been learning, all pertaining, of course, to American football. Let's get started. So first and foremost, we're going to go over background and competition levels. The sport of American football is a very intense and strategy driven sport played by multiple levels. Everything from youth, Pop Warner, Little League, uh, things at get-togethers at parks, to high school levels, collegiate levels such as the NCAA, NAIA schools, different divisions, and all the way up to the professional level. Over here in the United States, or I'd say in the world, the highest level performing athletes for this sport is at the NFL level. Each team comprises of 11 players on the field at all times, divided into offense, defense, and special teams. The objective of the game is to outscore the opponent primarily in advancing the ball towards their end zone. The sport of American football stands out from other sports due to the strategic gameplay and unconventional way of measuring progress, down to the last inch sometimes. It is played by two teams with 11 members on each side of the field at any moment. One team receives possession of the ball, known as offense, and attempts to move it in a sequence of choreographed plays to eventually score. Some teams tend to play, running gun offenses. They kind of just let the QB knows what he's doing. Sometimes the offense gets called from the sidelines. So it really depends on how offenses play. And then defense is kind of tends to typically be reactive depending on how the offense um, is playing, and then they react to their players, their positions, where they're out at the field, certain indicators. And like other professional sports, strategy in American football plays a really key role. In American football, pre-designed plays are especially significant. Offense and defense have scripted plays established for each teams according to their team style, their coaches, each individual player. Um, off, Offense and defense, they both have each individualized plays, and that kind of gives the team their identity. If it's more of a blitzing team, or kind of a deep routes team, maybe that team is really heavy on running. Some defenses will have different kinds of setups and formations along with offenses. A few of the better known systems for strategy include, like West Coast offense, Wildcat offense, and the nickel defense, sorry. Coaches recruit players whose strengths fit these systems, and they build their team game plans from them. Um, There are many additional rules and nuances, especially when there are tied games. In that case, overtime is played most often in a single 15-minute period in which the first team to score wins. Now we're going to go a little bit deeper into how exactly these points are scored. So this game, at the NFL level and the collegiate level, the whole game is played for four 15-minute quarters, totaling of 1 hour playing time. Teams alternate positions, with offense aiming to advance the ball in 10-yard increments using a series of plays. Each offense position starts with four downs attempts, of course, trying to gain 10 yards, and that would reset the count back to first down. Scoring methods include touchdowns, which are worth 6 points, an extra point, which occurs after a team has scored a touchdown, whether running it or catching it, in the end zone, which could be either a kicking field goal point, which would be one, or an additional play that will count for 2 points. If this score is not made, if the field goal attempt is failed, they lose. They do not gain a point. Same thing goes for the additional 2 points. If the play is not successful, they do not get the points. Um, in terms of field goal, if you are in range and if you are in range of a field goal and have not completed a touchdown, teams can shoot for this 3 point field goal point. And safeties occur when the quarterback, or a lot of times quarterbacks are sacked in their own end zone when they are short of yards, or they just get taken back too far from a rushing defense. Defensive units aim to stop the offense, create turnovers through interceptions or fumbles, and can also score. Strategy is a defining trait. Teams operate complex offensive and defensive systems, ergo our West Coast offense and nickel defense. As for field specifications and markings, there are variations in terms of our fields, our American football fields, from high school to our collegiate and NFL levels. Our high school levels tend to be a little bit smaller, field goal wise. NFL and collegiate levels are relatively closer in size. In terms of length, regulation football field is 120 yards or 360 feet, 109.8 meters, including the 10-yard end zones on both sides for each team to score on. Width-wise, the standard width is 53.3 yards or 160 feet or 48.8 meters, for high school. That goes for high school, NCAA, and NFL fields. They're all the same width, all the same length. Acreage-wise, just be specific, because it does play into part sometimes in high schools. They might have a little bit smaller field or a little bit wider. It just really depends. So acreage-wise, the field should cover 1.32 acres. And youth league variations, they have field length ranging from 50 to 80 yards, and widths from 23 to 50 yards, depending on the age group. In terms of field markings, these are very important, because they do vary a lot depending on your level of play. And it does change the way that some teams may play the ball depending on where the hash marks are. It does change the layout and the formations of plays and strategic plays drastically. So sidelines run for the full length of the 120-yard length, marking the boundary of play. So this is anything outside the sideline is designated as at out. End zones are located at both ends of the field, measuring 10 yards deep and 53.3 yards wide. So the whole length of the field. Yard lines are marked every 5 yards across the full length, with numbers every 10 yards from the goal line to the 50-yard line. Hash marks, which are what vary the most on these fields, Hash marks at the high school level are 17.6 yards apart. So it's these yellow lines running through the middle of the football field on this bottom picture. And at the collegiate level, the hash marks are 13.3 yards apart. And at the NFL level, they are just 6 yards apart. So it's the thinnest line right through the middle for the NFL. In terms of golf posts, these are the these golf posts are used when making field goals and or getting that extra point after a touchdown. These golf posts are centered at the end of each end zone. They are 10 feet high. A crossbar is 10 feet high, same for both. At the NFL and college level, they the upright sections on the sides after the crossbar go 25 feet above the crossbar for a total height of 35 feet. At the high school level, uprights are range between 12 and 15 feet, making the total height between 22 and 25 feet. At the NFL and collegiate level, they're 18 feet 6 inches across widthwise, and at the high school level, they're 23.4 inches wide. So um, this difference really comes from the accuracy of these and the skill of these players. So typically at the NFL and collegiate level, you have these higher level kickers who are way more accurate, and the demand of sport requires so much more of them. This this very wide high school post would just be a little bit too easy for um, these NFL and collegiate level players. So same thing goes for the high school players. It's that wide just so that they can make it a little bit easier for these lower level athletes. It's not that they're bad. It's just they're at younger age, just at a lower level, and these taller, narrower golf posts, field goal posts, are just a lot more difficult to make a ball through. Into our motion and physiological demands, or our time motion analysis for my sport. American football players are typically broken up into three sections, primarily between we have our high speed positions, our mixed speed positions, and our low speed positions, all labeled differently depending on your team but generically they're typically labeled as your skill players, your hybrid players, or your power players, or your big skills. There can be broken up from our skill players would be our wide receivers, cornerbacks, safeties, running backs, and our hybrid players would be our linebackers, tight ends, and QBs. And our big skills or power players would be our offensive line and defensive line players. Um, on average, these averages range from game to game. All depends on the type of team that you have, the specific kind of players you got, and how they run their plays. Um, so in regards to movement and performance demands, American football is highly positional. Skill players like wide receivers and cornerbacks cover between 6 and 9 kilometers per game, involving frequent high-speed sprints and change of direction efforts. Their demands are both anaerobic and aerobic. Anaerobic because they need those quick response times, fast acceleration, and that aerobic component comes in once if they have their aerobic conditioning in. Those recovery times between those sprints and walking back makes a significant difference, and it's going to make it a lot easier on them. Our hybrid players like linebackers and quarterbacks mix bursts of speed with moderate total distance. Linemen cover the least amount of ground, around 1 to 2 kilometers, but perform the highest force in short duration bursts, and they rely primarily on their ATP-PC systems. Each position demands distinct physical qualities, making training highly individualized, especially for all these training groups. And they're broken down into three, but they all have their own thing. Offensive linemen and defensive linemen have different demands, or so do our linebackers, tight ends, and QBs. You can kind of generalize them together, but they each still have different positions and different ways of playing the game. Um, Again, our wide receivers, cornerbacks, safeties, and running backs cover between 6 and 9 kilometers per game. They're very high. They have very frequent high speed sprints, and very rapid changes of direction. Highly aerobic energy demands. Our mix our mixed speed positions cover 4 to 6 kilometers per game. They're a blend of quick bursts and sustained movements. So, everything but from running long distances, chasing a ball down for our linebackers, or tight ends running down the field for a long pass, or maybe just short. QB got tackled in the backfield. Their effort was pretty short for that play. And lastly, for our low speed positions, or our big skills power players, they typically cover 1 to 2 kilometers per game on average. They have short explosive bursts between 5 to 10 meters. Frequent collisions. Some of the most impacted players. So there's a lot of forces going down in those trenches. Predominantly anaerobic, focusing on their ATP PC systems. And over here to the right, we see some data just to give you some ideas of, depending on the games how many games these players played. Just kind of some of the numbers you should be expecting for each position. Some of the more important takeaways from this one. So positional maximum velocity is a good average for every single position. It gives you a good number. It gives you a wide range of who your fastest players are, who your slower players are. That helps you categorize, where you guys are at position wise. Maybe you might have a team with slightly faster quarterbacks or slightly faster wide receivers. In this case, our cornerbacks and safeties seem to be our fastest position. They seem to have our fastest positional maximum velocity at 33 kilometers per hour, followed shortly behind by our wide receivers at 32.5 kilometers per hour. And obviously, our slowest times we're looking at are going to be our offensive and defensive linemen. Defensive linemen at 25.9 kilometers per hour, and offensive linemen at 22.5. Some other important numbers we should be looking at is their total distance covered through games. Obviously, if we look at this, we see a lot of similar numbers. The ones that stick out the most are our offensive linemen, defensive linemen. They obviously are traveling the least. But there's a stark difference between our cornerbacks and safeties. They are traveling a lot more than our wide receivers, even though they're their direct competitor. Our cornerbacks and safeties are directly covering our wide receivers, but they still are covering so much more ground because of their specific position and how much attention they need to be paying attention to the play. A lot of things can be going around. Even though they do have their man-to-man coverages, they should be able to react quickly and accelerate quickly enough. If they need to sprint across the field because their running back's taking it the other way, they got to get down there. So of course, it's not surprising that they have higher distances than all the other players. Other good numbers are our acceleration efforts. How many more acceleration efforts we have. Just like we have a little bit more maximum velocity, higher max velocity numbers for our our cornerbacks and safeties, because they need to be able to react faster than the wide receivers to get to the ball if it's on the other side of the field. They also do have our wide receivers have the highest max velocity, high velocity efforts, because they are starting from zero and they're trying to get as fast and as quickly away from these cornerbacks and safeties as possible. These high velocity distances are surprisingly, our linebackers have the highest numbers here at 98.5 meters, give or take 100 meters, just because of how quickly they need to react inside that field. A lot of these wide receivers, a lot of these teams have a lot of plays that are in the short game. They have a lot of short game plays. They only need to be able to cover 10 yards to get to the next first down. So, of course, all of these plays are happening within the linebackers and strong DBs sides. So they got to be able to react the most, react the fastest, and they should have the highest response times as well. Um, all of these numbers are great. All these numbers are important for each individual player. It's great. It's a great thing for our coaches to know that our player, if we to see these numbers, to make sure our players are in line. It's good to have a good sense of where our players should be, and if we see somebody who's lacking behind, or a set of players who a position type who's not where they should be, we need to work to get them back, or get them where they should really. Next, we're going to go into some bioenergetics and energy system contributions. Plays more into that motion analysis. During plays, we have so different recovery times depending on if a team uses a timeout, if there's a water break, 2 minutes in between. Football is an intermittent by design. Plays average just over 5 seconds, followed by 36 to 47 seconds worth of rest between series. Rest averages, between series, rest averages over 11 minutes. These create a sport where energy systems must recover quickly, to making this typically a more anaerobic sport. The ATP-PC system fuels explosive actions, quick bursts of energy, and like tackles, sprints, while the glycolytic system supports short bursts, and aerobic system aids in recovery between efforts. So glycolytic systems in this sport tend to very rarely kick in, but more so into our wide receivers, DBs, tight ends who have to cover a lot of distance. Sometimes the play might go over their 5 seconds. Very rarely, but they gotta run their distances, and they do have to make their way back between um, in time for the next call. And sometimes the QB needs to they're short on time, and they got to run back to back plays, so they got to be able to make it back and go back to back. So very important for these athletes to be able to recover quickly. Um, Especially with these times, even though the majority of these plays do get plenty, ample rest between snaps. Um, Work to rest ratios differ depending on position. Again, some wide receivers got to run all the way down; they have to cover more ground. DBs to cover more ground. We see that our linemen are closer to a work to rest ratio of 1 to 6, sometimes even 1 to 8. While skill position players have a rest time between 1 to 3 and 1 to 5, between 1 to 3 and 1 to 5, between bursts, and this has major implications for training specificity. Our linemen do not need to run as often or run as far as our wide receivers, linebackers, and skill players, and other skill hybrid players. However, it is still important that they still get some sort of exposure to those shorter rest times. Again, just like if a QB needs to go back to back on plays, just for those worst case scenarios, or honestly, they're not even that worst case scenarios, but they're essential for their recovery. If they can recover um, from their aerobic systems better, their PC systems are going to require, they're going to recover even faster. So it's still good to expose them to a little bit of that, those shorter work to rest ratio times, just for their energy systems to be exposed to being recovered that fast. Energy system contributions wise, ATP PC systems is Dominant for these quick bursts actions for this sport, be anything between 5 and 7 seconds. Glycolytic systems support repeat sprints or repeat sprint abilities, just like I stated before. If a QB needs to go run back to back, or they need the wide receiver to run, run trips deep. They got to go all the way to the end zone for a Hail Mary. Right after a long play, they got to do it. And our aerobic systems are rarely seen here in this sport. However, it is good to expose them to that because it's critical for recovery between high intensity bouts, even though it is rarely seen as a main source of energy. As for training themes, American football is an explosive, high contact, heavy sport, heavy position specific sport that relies on short bursts of power. Rapid changes of direction, high force output, and repeated efforts. Each KPI here helps you assess the readiness and develop the programming, monitor progress, and individualized training. Here's what each metric shows us. On the right here, we have some numbers for our positions, depending on our positions, and some of their metrics, depending on the kind of variables we're looking for, such as muscular strength, muscular power, reactivity. As for muscular strength, we tend to look a lot for peak force, which is maximal force output. This is critical for driving off of the line, blocking, and tackling. We tend to see the highest peak force numbers in our linemen. So we have in our linemen or big skill. So offensive linemen, defensive linemen. Um, uh, Following that, we have peak relative force, which is a force output normalized depending on the player's body mass. Great for comparing across athletes and identifying who produces the most force per kilogram. Um, we tend to see a lot of our skill players be actually higher here in these numbers, just because of the amount of force they're able to produce while being a lot lighter than our linemen. So even though they may our linemen produce the most force, it might just be correlated to their body weight. But when it comes to peak relative force, our skill players, wide receivers, and our skill players tend to be a tad better than our linemen. Um, Force at 250 um, milliseconds is in newtons, shows how much force an athlete can apply quickly. Important because most football actions occur within in in less than 300 milliseconds. This comes sorry, microseconds, and this is more so their reactivity time, how much force they can produce as quickly as possible. Um, and when we have our RFDs from 0 to 250, this is the rate of force development. Crucial for explosiveness off the snap, quick starts, and change of direction actions. Again, this is just for reactions. The reaction speed, the amount of force they can produce off rip. As soon as that ball snaps, how quickly can they get their hands on somebody's pads? Um, Power output, in terms of jumps, especially IMTPs, isometric mid thigh pull, gives force production metrics for our lower extremities. Why it matters. Why muscular strength matters. Strength under time constraints is game changing. Every movement in football is fast and powerful. So the faster we are, the stronger we are within those few seconds of a running play. That's what defines a winning team. So if you're faster, stronger, within that 1 hour of total game time, you will most likely be the team to win the game. On to our second part, going over muscular power and reactivity. In terms of muscular power, we tend to look at jump height. It's simple, effective. It's a simple metric for lower body power. some of these jump heights actually directly correlate to the game, especially when our wide receivers are taught to catch at the highest point by our team coaches, and this could be a game changing metric. So if our wide receivers are able to jump higher than our cornerbacks, then they will, and they have good hands, assumingly. Um, they will catch the ball in the end zone, and that could be the difference between a win and a loss for a game. The difference between being at a Super Bowl and winning a Super Bowl. Counter movement depth. These are too shallow or too deep can impact force and velocity. Useful for coaching optimal mechanics. So we want our players to be safe. Counter movement depth jumps are, they're great. They're showing landing mechanics, and if we can teach them how to jump, we should also teach them how to better land into their weight. Following that, we have unweighted braking or propulsive phases, which is just breakdown of jump mechanics, which are helpful for identifying asymmetries or timing inefficiencies. This is good before preseason, just to identify anything that might be wrong. Good for preseason combine. We need to take a look at those just to make sure our players are game ready, or camp ready. Takeoff velocity. Direct indicator of how powerfully the athlete leaves the ground, how quick can they get off that line, and how fast can they make it, cover those 10 yards and catch that ball. Time till takeoff, reaction, or another reaction metric. Faster takeoff equals quicker neuromuscular response. RSI or repeat. RSI modifieds or jump heights, time to take off, reactiveness, and explosive are combined. High RSI equals better stretch shortening cycle, important for cuts, sprints, and directional changes. And finally, we have sprint speed. Typically, we have our 40-meter and our 40-yard dashes, also used in our combines. Super important for acceleration and top end speed. They're strongly correlated with power. Muscular power, it's very important for our teams. These metrics directly translate to sprinting, jumping, and directional change, all which are key football demands. Tabling off into this last part, which is reactivity. We measure mean jump height, which measures consistent explosive ability across repetitions. Taking their average jump height helps us, group our players together by height. Helps give us a standard of where they're at in their training. Mean RSI ratio tracks reactive strength over multiple jumps, which is great. Because that's what we want. We want to be able to keep explosive movements. We want to make our explosive movements repeatable, and if we can make them repeatable, they're able to translate that over to the game. We want our running backs being able to run their fastest 40s within those, 10 yards to get that first down, and I want them to be able to keep running at that top speed or as close to that top speed as they can throughout the entirety of the game. Mean force, just again, consistency of force output during repeat efforts. Important for our linemen in hybrid positions because they are going back to back to back, repeating the same actions over and over and over again, constantly being beat down. And they have to constantly get themselves up and be able to fight through those trenches and protect their quarterback. Or in defenses, they gotta go get the quarterback, go sack them. Another metric I like to take is top 3 jump averages, useful for assessing peak capability, while filtering out fatigue or errors. So giving them plenty of break in between, I don't want I don't want fatigue to be a factor in their jumps. So we would take the averages of the 3 max jumps, with plenty of rest in between, anything from 5 to 10 minutes between runs, sometimes maybe even longer. Another thing I want, RSA, repeat sprint ability. So tests like the yo-yo, um, intermittent recovery level 1, level 2, um, and so forth. They assess how well an athlete recovers and repeats high intensity efforts. This yo-yo test is particularly great and directly correlates to the sport of American football, due to its just nature. They have to be able to um, uh, do a high speed effort, high intensity effort, and then they do get a brief moment of recovery, which kind of simulates, line drives for our active drives during games. Something else would be the change of direction and efficiency. So drills like the pro agility or pro agility tests, um, tied to reactive strength and neuromuscular control and decision making. They're being able to change direction faster, gives it could be the difference between linebacker seeing the ball on the other side of the field, or the running back being able to see a gap. So if they see that gap and they're able to change direction quickly enough and accelerate into that gap as quickly as they can, that makes or breaks plays, and it's super important uh, for winning games. Why reactivity matters? Reactivity reflects how well an athlete can perform under fatigue. Vital in games with repeated high effort plays. Moving on to common injuries and prevention strategies. With high collisions and rapid decelerations, injuries in American football are incredibly frequent. Um, in fact, football has some of the highest injury rates of any sport. Over 60% of injuries occur in the lower extremities, of course, and particularly in the knee. Sprains, strains, contusions, and fractures dominate the injury landscape for our sport. Importantly, many injuries are non-contact, surprisingly, and are linked to training load errors. Too much load over the week, or too much load in the preseason. Poor landing mechanics after a max jump or something like that, or a quick change in direction, or just even inadequate recovery. That's why our aerobic systems play such a key role in having our athletes conditioned so that they are able to recover even faster during their PC systems, um, through their aerobic systems. Prevention strategies must focus on eccentric strength, deceleration control, and managing acute to chronic workload ratios to reduce injury risk. That plays a key role not only with their team coaches, but especially with us as strength conditioning coaches, as performance coaches, as EPs. We want our athletes' numbers to get better. We want them to be better athletes. We want them to win. So we do not want to overload them. Drag them through the mat, run gassers, things like that. When we know that they're going to be doing a lot of the same actions during their team plays, or at a different practice session, or at a different series. Um, so due to the high risk of injury, for this sport, I'm just going to go over some percentages. So most injuries, of course, happen in the lower extremities, accounting for up to 60% of the NFL, with knee injuries making up 36% of this 60% of injuries. Upper extremity injuries represent about 30%. Um, Common injury types include, like I said, sprains, strains accounting for 40%, contusions around 25%, dislocations at 15%, fractures and concussions at 10 and 5%, respectively. Um, On to the next section. In terms of prevention strategies, injury rates are higher during games than in practices. We want, with the NFL seeing 64.7 injuries per 1,000 exposures in game, Many injuries result from contact, but non-contact injuries like muscle strains often linked to excessive training loads are also significant. Um, Prevention strategies to focus on as coaches, we want to manage, of course, training loads to avoid overuse of muscles. We want to give our athletes um, not a break, but we want to be able to make sure they have sufficient rest and they're not overtrained. Um, we don't want to work them too hard, especially if they're going to be doing some of the same things, or just some of the things that we would be doing are already going to be covered by other coaches. We want to be able to manage our load with our athletes very strategically. Strength and conditioning for joint stability, especially our knees. So most of the injuries are the knees, or at our knees, whether it's an ACL tear, um, you know, uh, patella snap, dislocations, any kind of tears, any injury with the knees. We want to be able to have good focus on that, especially when a lot of these knee injuries come from decelerations or high impact collisions, high force collisions. Neuromuscular training to reduce non-contact injuries. So we want to be able to make sure they know their mechanics, their biomechanics. We want them to have proper form when sprinting, landing, jumping, um, tackling, and proper recovery and monitoring during high intensity periods like preseason or camp. We want to make sure we're not dragging them too hard, because if we do, they're more likely to be hurt. And if they are hurt preseason, they will most likely not be able to start playing as soon as the season starts. And their likelihood of recovery is going to be a lot more difficult because, like we know, our athletes are during their games, they are also practicing, they are also training. Um, these are some of the key points we want to focus on. In terms of um, some sample workouts and designs, we want to be able to schedule, or we want to be able to set up our games, set up our practices strategically. And here is an example of one of my linear speed days with a max velocity focus. We're going to start with, obviously, we want to start every workout with this dynamic warm up, get our bodies nice and heated up. Make sure we're going through the proper ranges of motion, all the planes of motion. We want to take our body through, especially for a sport as dynamic as American football. Our athletes move through all kinds of ranges of motion and all kinds of positions, sometimes even the most awkward ones. Um, so things like with skips with arm swing, with forward and backward. It's not something that's super complicated, just something to get their bodies warmed up for for these next moves that are coming up. We want to get some active stretching going in here, like some knee hugs to lunges, initial hip flexion with T-reach, some broad lunges with reach through, with hip extension, and shoulder flexion, plantar flexion. Some Spider-Mans just to open up those hips. 4-point to walk-ins that get that fascia nice and stretched out and working. Reverse lunges with overhead reach, get those spinal muscles activated. And then after this dynamic warm up, we're going to move into our movement prep series. So it's just a series of movements just to prepare for our the kind of impacts that our body's going to be put through. So, for this day specifically, we're working on a linear speed day. So we're working on our sprinting mechanics. So movement prep wise, we're looking at low skips. We're looking at skips, different variations of pogos, hops, some single leg stuff, bounds, all these things that have to do with a lot of ground reaction forces, multiplanar, and a lot of these actions are predominantly at the ankle, especially with these pogos and switches. All great things. And then this is a great prep to go into our neuro before our core exercise for the day. Neuros are more so our athletes get more in touch with their bodies, just so we can get our um, muscles, ligaments, and joints, and have every single part of our athlete's body in sync and get them exposed to what we're going to be doing for our all out exercise at the end. So neuro prep wise, we're looking at power exercises like power skips for height, power skips for distance. We're looking at straight leg bounds, high knee runs, butt kick runs, taking them through that cycle motion of a sprint. Get those hips ready to run linearly. Um, we're also looking at some single leg high knees, single leg step overs, some dead leg runs. A lot of these things are your unilateral or we're working on one side specifically, but now we're going to taper off towards the end of the neural prep. We tend to do we're going to get closer to those full sprint mechanics like our A skips and our B skips. And then for our core workout to the for this day specifically, we're working on flying 30s for 7 repetitions um, at 8 to 7 minutes rest. Our flying 30s, they're not very long, but they I want them to be running as fast as they can. I want them getting working up to their max speed, and then they're sprinting. We're going to do this for 7 repetitions. They're going to have plenty of rest in between because, again, I want max effort for each repetition. So they're going to have 8 to 10 minutes of rest depending on the day. Another sample workout is this this is a change of direction with high intensity day. Again, same thing. We'll start off with a dynamic warm up. Simple, get our bodies nice and warm, muscles warmed, get ready for this workout that we have planned, and we'll move into our movement prep. A lot of change in direction stuff, so we're working more a lot of on rapid stops, full stops. So that will be our sticks, drop squats to stick, lateral depth drops to stick, stick their landings, forward sprint to lateral stick. Banded change of direction rebounds, so banded lateral rebounds, and then we'll finish off our movement prep with a partner chase, shuffle or sprint reaction depending on the day. Just 3 repetitions and no more than um, 5 to 10 seconds for that, just for a movement prep because I don't want them too tired. And then following that, we're going to go straight into our neuro prep. We're going to work on our pro agility, so our 5-10-5 technique. We're working at a 50 to 60% rep. We're looking anywhere between 3 and 5 reps. And then we're going to work on our Y drill with a verbal cue. So we're going to set this up at 10 yards with 4 cones. One cone being our starting cone, another cone going 8 to 10 yards out, with 2 cones at 45 degrees each way from that second cone at the 8 or 10 yard mark, 5 yards away. And our athletes are going to sprint to that second from the first cone to the second cone as fast as they can, and they will react to left or right, right left, and then they will go in that direction of depending on where they are told to go by the coach. Then we have our lateral shuffle to sprints. So we'll work up 3 times for 10 yards. We're gonna do our lateral shuffle for 5 yards, and go straight into a sprint for the last 5 yards into the acceleration phase. We're going to do 3 times each side for 10 yards total. Then we have short shuttle variations. So anything from a mirror or a flash cue. So this could be set up just like our partner chase, where 2 teammates would be facing each other. Ideally, we'd have them in with similar speeds, or in this case, we'd have them split up by position groups. So we'd have them facing either players who have opposite positions of them. So offensive lineman, defensive lineman, or would have same positions playing up against each other, competing. And we'd also have the X drill, so two cone cuts plus two cone crossover steps. We'll do that for 3 reps, and we'll finish off our neuro prep reaction, change direction with ball drop or flash. So this is just like a red light, green light. Just have them go um, react to the ball drop. In this case, it would simulate like a hike, and they'll take off for 20-25 yards as fast as they can. We're trying to get them in that 90 to 95% for change of direction in the for this neuro prep, and then for this core workout, we want them at 100%. First exercise, we're looking at this 10-yard sprint to 90-degree change of direction, back over to this 10-yard sprint. So we're going to work on both sides for 3 repetitions. We're going to go into a lateral shuffle with reactive cuts for 5 yards. And finally, we'll finish off with a partner towel resisted change of direction drill. We're looking at 3 5-second bursts for each one per partner. I have 2 more here. This is another sprint day. This is a repeat sprint ability day, so an RSA day. Dynamic warm up is per usual. We're looking at skips, world's greatest stretch, high knee walk to quad pull, resistant knee flexions, lateral lunges, cariokas, A skips. Just things, just to get our bodies nice and warmed and prepped for this workout. Movement prep wise, we're working on sprint mechanics wall drill series, sprint in place to sprint out. So we're just basically high knees in place, and then you take off for 10 yards. We're gonna do build up sprints, 2 for 20 yards. So like our flying sprints, acceleration, sled pushes. We're working on a moderate load for this one because again, we're not trying to gas our players just on the movement prep. We're just getting them ready for the core workout. So we're looking at a moderate load, not anything too crazy. Looking at around 25% or even to 45% all the way down to 25% of their body weight. And then we're going to work on quick pogos with arm drive. So a little bit more high intensity pogos. To make our way over to our neuro prep, and we're going to work on our flying 10s for 2 repetitions just to get them exposed to those kinds of speeds. To get their bodies exposed to that kind of speed. We're working on curvilinear sprints too, so curve sprints. We're looking at anything from 20 to 25 yards. These curve sprints can vary. We can also work on this next one, which is a wavy sprint. So how we have a cone staggered every 5 yards, and they got to weave in and out, trying to keep their head level, hips inside. Try not to deviate too far outside the cone. Try to keep it tight. Again, this one will be another 20 yards, and we'll finish off our neural prep with a sprint to stop for 10 yards with a 5-second pause, and we'll repeat. So this will be a sprint, stop, sprint, stop, sprint, stop. And for our core workout for this RSA day we'll be looking at 6 to 8 40-yard sprints on 20 seconds or 30 seconds of rest. And then with a recovery block with an active walk, 2 minutes, and then repeat our set. Our skill position players we're looking for 3 sets. Linemen at 2 sets of 5 to 30 yards at 20 seconds rest. So a little bit shorter, a little bit lesser load for our linemen, and just because of their, we don't want to keep them at the same level as these as our wide receivers, because they're just not going to be exposed to it, and we also want to manage their load. And we're going to finish off this workout with a sled marches. We're only doing 10 just for 15 yards for a light load, just working on posture. And finally, this is our last day, or change of direction or agility day, agility conditioning day. Same as before, we're working on a warm up, just getting our bodies ready into our movement prep. So we're going to be working on cone shuffles. So our cone shuffle matrix. So just basically shuffling forward, backwards, side to side. We're going to do that for 3 rounds. We're looking at a 50% 50 to 45 to 65% intensity for these, just to get them get those hips opened up and moving through all these in all these different directions. We're also going to do a mini hurdle change of direction with acceleration, just getting over that mini hurdle, getting over those mini hurdles just with slightly increasing our acceleration, and getting make sure our feet are nice and high, clearing those hurdles. Next, we're going to work into our reactive sprint to lateral plant. So we're sprinting and we're going to get a nice sharp cut, and we're going to stick our foot on that 5 yard line, and finally we'll end our movement prep with a sprint back pedal and react and go. So we'll have them sprint, back pedal, react to a ball, and then we'll have them take off to it. That'll be with a coach, just giving them cues on what to do. Then we're going to move into our neuro prep for the day. So we're looking at mirror drills with partners or coaches. Things like the 5-10-5. This time we're just going to be doing for a little bit longer. So we're doing 3 15-second bouts just to get exposure to that higher end, so a little bit more time just out of our PC system. So we're trying to double that. So we're going to start working into our glycolytic. And we're also going to do drop and react. So we'll do ball drops or flash cues, hand signals, anything that'll give our athletes a cue to just drop. And we'll also do some 3-cone agilities with reaction stimulus. Same thing, just give them like a ball drop or flash cue. Just 3-cone drill. We'll do that for only 2 rounds, and we'll finish off our neuro prep with a shuffle to sprint ladder with just 3 repetitions, and we'll keep it short with a 10-yard ladder. We'll finish off this exercise with modified. With a 5-10-5 shuttle, we're looking at 4 repetitions with just 30 seconds of rest. Next, we'll go into the Z drill for 4 rounds with a walk back recovery, agility ladder circuit, 3 patterns with 20 seconds each. Partner change of direction tag, 4 10-second bouts, and change of direction finishers, sprint plants, and sprint repeats. We'll do the first 4, so we'll do the modified Z drill, agility ladder, and partner change of direction tag in one big circuit, and we'll have our position groups split up in big skill. We'll have our big skill linebacker, big skill hybrid players, and our skill players all in different sections. We'll probably have our QBs separate too, depending on our roster volume. If we have more of one position, we'll probably split them off separately. We'll try to keep our skills, linemen and linebackers / running backs together. Most likely keep our quarterbacks a little bit and skill position and special teams separate. And then we'll have them rotate these. We'll have them rotate in and out of these drills, and then that way we have them always doing something different, and they all get a little bit of exposure to each drill. And then we'll finish off with a change of direction, sprint to plant, and then sprint again. So we'll do that with 20 seconds on, 20 seconds off for 6 times. We'll do that every 5 yards for 20 yards. So we'll sprint for 5 yards, plant, or 5 to 10 yards, depending on position, and we'll have them have a 20 seconds on, 20 seconds off rest for 6 repetitions. Some key performance and program takeaways. Typically, we want to take a multi-phase approach. So we want to incorporate periodization and progress from general strength and power to more sport-specific conditioning and agility work as the season or training cycle progresses. We want to work on. You want to make sure we know where we're at with this team, where we at with this, or where we're at with this specific player. If this is their, they're getting ready for preseason, if they got camp in a couple weeks, what they need to be ready for, and what they need to be working on. Volume and intensity wise, we want to work on keeping that balance. So we're going to use a progressive overload. So we're working on higher weights, more sprints or strength power, and very work to rest ratios just to simulate our game intensity, especially when we're getting to those last couple of weeks of the preseason, getting them ready for active games. Um, Another key thing, we want to work on injury prevention. We want to always include prehab exercises like eccentric hamstring trainings, rotator cuff work for our QBs, and neck strengthening for concussion prevention for our linemen, and any other players who may be exposed to those. They're more susceptible to those high impact forces. Um, Recovery and monitoring, we want to implement active recovery days and monitor key metrics, um, fatigue, soreness, power output, just to avoid overtraining and reduce the risk of injury. If we know that our players are getting ready for camp, we probably would not want them maxing out that week before, because they're just not going to perform where they want to or where their coaches want them to be during camp. They're not going to be ready for games. You don't want to be doing those kinds of exercises too close to anything major. Um, and doing those kinds of exercises is just they'll be more susceptible to injury. Um, by aligning our programmings with our KPIs, we'd be ensuring that each player's physical capacity is directly tailored to what's demanding of them on the field, by their position, by their play types, their team, um, anything we want them to be ready for anything on that field, even worst case scenarios. Um, so just to wrap up, American football is a unique mix of strategies, chaos, and precision. Demands vary by position, but all players need strength, all players need speed, all players need power, and they all need resilience. Training must be position specific, guided by key metrics, and build around the game's unique stop and go rhythm. So we want to work around that anaerobic theme for this game, anaerobic power theme for this game. By blending data, field performance, and individualized load management, we give athletes the best chance to dominate on game day and stay healthy while doing it. We want to finish off with these last, just a couple questions, um, a short quiz, if I might say. Just 10 questions, real quick, just to kind of go over some of the key topics, very important things to know, especially for this sport. We'll start off with question one. What energy system is dominant during a typical football play? Um, we have between A, being aerobic, B, glycolytic, C, ATP-PC, or D, oxidative phosphorylation. Number two, which position group typically covers the most distance during a game? Is it A, linemen, B, hybrid players, C, special teams, or D, skill players? Number three, what is the average play duration in American football? Is it A, 3 seconds, B, 5.2 seconds, C, 10 seconds, or D, 15.5 seconds? Number four, Which KPI measures how quickly an athlete produces force? Is it A, force at 250 ms, B, jump height, C, rate of force development, D, sprint speed? Number 5, why is RSI important in football performance? Is it A, it measures endurance, B, it tracks jump height, C, it reflects reactiveness and stretch shortening ability, D, it shows body composition? Number 6, what injury accounts for the highest percentage of NFL injuries? Is it A, concussions, B, fractures, C, knee injuries, D, shoulder dislocations? 7, what is the main focus of COD, change of direction, high intensity training days? Is it A, top end speed, B, max strength, C, directional changes in agility, or D, powerlifting mechanics? 8, how long is a typical rest period between football plays, excluding stoppages? Is it A, 11 minutes, B, 1 minute, C, 36 seconds, or D, 5 seconds? Number 9, which phase should be emphasized for off-season / preseason conditioning? Is it A, agility drills, B, periodized strength and power buildup, C, game day simulations, or D, static stretching? Number 10, which metric helps assess recovery and repeatability of effort? Is it A, IMTP peak force? Is it B, yo-yo IR2? C, pro agility shuttle? Or D, 40-yard dash? All right, and the answers for each question will go from top to bottom. So for number 1, it was C, ATP PC system. Number 2, it was letter D, skill players. Number 3, 5.2 seconds, or B. Number 4, C, rate of force development, or RFD. Number 5 was letter C. It reflects the reactiveness and stretch shortening cycles ability. Number 6 was C, knee injuries. Number 7 was also C, directional changes and ability. Number 8 was C, 36 seconds. Number 9 was B, periodized strength and power buildup. And finally, number 10 was B, yo-yo IR2, or intermittent recovery level 2. All right, and that is all. Thank you for listening through my presentation. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out in the comments. Or all data in this presentation will be backed by credible sources, including MDPI and everything from Gatorade Sports Science Institution and ProQuest research studies. All the references will be linked to in the description below. And thanks again for listening to my presentation. Thank you.